When I was in Year 12, I went to the UNSW Medicine Information Evening, and it really explained for me all the options for how to get into medicine at UNSW. So I hope this video is useful for you. Enjoy.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you here to UNSW Sydney. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we're up to momentarily. My name's Chris Lewis. I'm the Head of Partnerships here at the university, which essentially means it's my job to make sure you know everything you need to know about the university. So before I do start, I would like to acknowledge the Bedegal people that are traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders both past and present and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. Now, we've got a really fantastic and exciting event program for you this evening. We've got a range of experts to tell you everything you need to know about medicine at UNSW. The medicine faculty at UNSW is obviously one of our most exciting and most prestigious faculties, and you'll hear from some of our very interesting students this evening who are going to tell you a little bit more about what they have been up to within the medicine program here. Most importantly, we're going to give you a very, very comprehensive overview of what it means to study medicine with us here at UNSW. Dr. Karen Gibson, our first year convener, will be up momentarily to talk you through exactly what that program looks like. We also have Naomi, who's a current student, and Dana, another current student, who are going to share their experiences. They're also going to give you all of the hints and tips you ever wanted about applying. We've got some more information about that coming up as we go through, but we'd just like to firstly welcome you with a look at what one of our current students is doing.
Hi, my name's Ashna. I'm a final year med student. When I think about my expectations of what UNSW is going to be like, I really had no idea. You don't realise how many opportunities there are and how broad they can be. I was at a single-sex high school. I came out with this sense of pure confidence because everyone I'd seen succeed had been women. So I was one of the original members of Women in Medicine UNSW. There was a lot of discussion at the time about gender equity in medicine. That was something I really cared about. I just completed an internship with McKinsey & Company in management consulting. Working with McKinsey was definitely a deviation from your classic med student path, but ultimately I felt that it was only going to improve how I worked as a doctorate. When I think about the way that all my different experiences at UNSW have changed me and changed my path, I think it's going to make me a better doctor in the sense that I've worked with so many different people from different backgrounds, but I also hope that it means that I do more than just practicing clinical medicine, which is so exciting and fun in its own way, but I've had exposure to research, to management consulting, to so many different things that I'm excited to get involved in even more professional endeavours. My one reason to choose UNSW above all else is honestly the people that I met. You just get this gut feeling which is like, I am in the presence of someone that's going to change the world, and I hope that I can do that with them.
Now, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Dr. Karen Gibson, our first phase convener and senior lecturer within the School of Medicine.
Well, good evening and welcome to UNSW and to this evening talk. I've been going to start with talking to you about what's different about UNSW Medicine. I'm sure you all already realise that it's a 6-year undergraduate program. What you possibly don't know is that you're going to learn biomedical and social sciences at the same time as you learn your medical practice. So you will have exposure to clinical situations right from first year. This is different from how medical schools used to run. Traditionally, there was 3 years of time on campus when you learnt the basic biomedical studies, followed by 3 years in hospitals. But now we combine them together so that you're doing them both at once. And the reason for this is, firstly, students find it more enjoyable. But secondly, it helps you to understand the relevance of what you're studying. If you're studying the function and structure of the heart, and then you see a patient with heart disease, it means much more for you. We also talk about horizontal content in this course, and that means when you're learning about the heart, for instance, you'll learn the structure, the function, the pathology, all things about it at the same time, rather than studying disciplines in separate. Vertical integration is because in some parts of the program we get years combined, and as well there are some things that flow throughout the whole 6 years. For example, the medical ethics and quality of medical practice go through all 6 years. Another unique thing is doing the independent learning project, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. We really emphasise collaborative learning, which I'll also talk a bit more about. And there's also the opportunity to broaden your education. Everyone doing a degree at UNSW has to do a couple of courses that are outside their faculty, and medicine's no exception to that. And some people enjoy the general education part so much that they actually elect to do an arts medicine degree. Okay, now a lot of people ask, well, what's the difference between an undergraduate program and a graduate program? First thing to point out is both programs produce very good doctors. The difference is that with undergraduate medicine, you need to not only learn your medicine, but also develop a lot of adult learning skills. Now, adult learning is a little bit different from potentially what you've done at school, and there's a lot more self-direction, a lot more reflection, a lot more teamwork. And the aim is that we teach you those skills while we teach you medicine. However, for a graduate entry program, which is usually only a 4-year degree rather than a 6-year degree, students already have developed their academic skills, and they've done that with their undergraduate degree, be that in health sciences or a different science, or in even arts or engineering. And so they've already developed their adult learning skills, and so they can do the medicine in just 4 years because that's all they need to concentrate on. Now, I mentioned before that we taught biomedical sciences and clinical practice right from the beginning. This here is a quote from William Osler, who's a very famous Canadian physician, and he actually first started bedside teaching. He said, "He who studies medicine without books sails an uncharted sea, but he who studies medicine without patience doesn't go to sea at all." Now, we could probably update that a bit in that a lot of our medical students actually don't use books anymore. They use online resources and online books. But the point is still important that you need to see patients in order to become a good doctor. One of the skills you really need to develop as a future doctor is being able to work in teams. No longer is it the situation where you have a GP in a solo practice that doesn't interact with everybody else. Instead, most GPs work in group practices, and even if you're in a solo practice, you still interact with other health professionals within the community, physiotherapists, community nurses, things like that. And so it's really important that you learn how to work in teams. And we really emphasise this so that you're used to working in teams, you understand different roles within teams, and what to do if the team doesn't seem to be working together very well. And the aim of teaching you all this is so that you get a nice coordinated approach for treating a patient. And of course, remember in hospitals, there's a lot of treatment of patients within teams. So the team will include the doctor, the physiotherapist, the occupational therapist, and so on. We think collaborative learning is so important that in the first phase, which is years 1 and 2, we actually teach both years together in the second half of the year. So if you were to join us in medicine next year as a first-year student, in the second half of the year, you'd actually be sitting in lectures and prac classes along with the second-year students. Now, you might think that would be a bit intimidating, but it turns out that the second years do an awful lot of peer teaching of the first years and help mentor them. And then the next year, of course, you first years are going to be the second years instead, and you'll take on that role. As well, we have a lot of group projects in phase 1. So in every course, you'll do a group project, which is with a group of 4 to 6 students. Now, a bit about the program structure. It's fairly straightforward in that it's 2-3 years. So the first 3 years give you the Bachelor of Medical Studies. In the first 2 years, we call that phase 1, and we focus on the biomedical and social sciences. And rather than studying separate disciplines like anatomy, which is structure, physiology, which is function, and so on, the teaching's all linked around health scenarios. So an example might be tuberculosis. And within that scenario, you'll learn about the organism that causes tuberculosis. You'll learn a lot about lung function because TB mainly affects the lung. You'll learn about the pharmacology or the drugs that treat tuberculosis. And you'll also learn a lot about public health and how we control tuberculosis. The phase 1 is predominantly on campus, and that can be either here in Sydney or Kensington or in Port Macquarie. As well, though, there is a little bit of time which is spent in the hospitals. Then we move on to phase 2, which is 3 days a week at hospital, 2 days on campus. And again, we don't separate the disciplines, everything's around weekly themes. So a theme might be breathlessness or gastrointestinal bleeding, something like that. Then the next half is the Doctor of Medicine part, which consists firstly of the year of research, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then phase 3, which is often thought of as being a clinical clerkship. At this stage, students are nearly all the time within the hospital situation, and they'll be attached to various clinical teams. So you might be with the neurology team, so neurologists look after patients with nerve conditions, and you'll be with that team, you'll see patients who have been admitted under the neurologists, you'll see patients in the accident emergency centre that come in with neurological conditions, and you'll also visit outpatients. So you'll be part of this team that you're working in. As well, there's time in general practice and other things like that. Then the final course before we let you out into the big wide world is preparation for internship, which we typically call print. Okay, so this independent learning project. You might say, well, why, if I'm going to be a clinician, do I need to do a year of intense research? The reason is it's really important for you to develop your skills of evaluating new knowledge. When you graduate from medicine, you'll have lots of knowledge and skills, but it'll get out of date very quickly. So you need to be able to continuously evaluate new information and see how it's relevant and if it's valid or not. And doing the year of the independent learning project gives you that opportunity. It also enables you to appraise the medical literature. At the same time as you're doing your independent learning project, that's when you complete your general education courses as well. And some students, the real high flyers, sometimes choose not to do an independent learning project, but instead do an actual honours degree, which is even more intense research. Okay, so you've obviously found your way to UNSW. This picture here shows you the main medical area, so the building up there is the Wallace Worth building, where most of the medical teaching takes place. Now you can't see inside it, but it's worth knowing it's been fully renovated recently, so a lot of the teaching spaces are very modern. We've got modern laboratories and lots of small group teaching rooms. As well, we've got a lot of teaching sites that are off campus. So we've got our clinical schools, and our clinical schools are Prince of Wales Hospital, just up the road, St Vincent's Hospital in Darlinghurst, St George and Sutherland Hospital, and then in southwestern Sydney, we've got Liverpool, Bankstown and Fairfield. So there's a lot of different hospitals that you could be attached to, and they've also got some associated hospitals. We've also got 5 rural teaching hospitals, and they're listed for you on the slide: Coffs Harbour, Port Macquarie, Albury, Wagga Wagga and Griffith. As well, we've got lots of general practitioners who are involved in the course, and we'll let students come into their general practice for their GP terms, and a number of community health centres as well. Now, selection into UNSW. Naomi's going to talk to you much more about the selection, so I won't spend very long on it here. other than to say the selection process is designed to pick out students who will be successful in the course and become good doctors. Obviously, you need to be intelligent and committed, but you also need to be good communicators, demonstrate personal attributes like empathy, and work well in teams. And some of these things we do aim to teach you in the course, so you will be taught about communication, working well in teams and so on. In order to graduate, you need 6 years of hard but enjoyable work. Now, I mentioned that you could do phase 1 also at Port Macquarie rather than Sydney. Although we've got 5 rural campuses, the other 4 you can only go to from year 3 onwards. But for Port Macquarie, you can go from first year. And we now take 25 students per year going to Port Macquarie. It's worth noting that if you're willing to accept a place at either Sydney or Port Macquarie, you should indicate that when you make your application, because it increases your chances of getting a place in medicine. Conceivably, if you just pick one of those campuses, once all the places in that campus run out, then you'll miss out. Whereas if you could select either campus, you've got more chance. Having said that, don't select a campus if you have no intention of going there. As well, it's worth noting that most people get their first choice of the 2 campuses. Often at open day, we get asked a lot about our lateral entry program. We only have 10 places for lateral entry, but how it works is that if you start at UNSW in a Bachelor of Medical Science, at the end of your 2nd year, you can then apply for lateral entry into medicine. Rather than taking your HSC into account, at this stage we take your weighted average mark, so the average mark of your courses you've done so far in those first 2 years of science. But you also need to do the UCAT and the interview. If you get offered a place, and bear in mind there are only 10 of those places, so out of the whole Bachelor of Medical Science cohort, that's probably only 5% of students, you still need to complete your Bachelor of Medical Science and your honours year, but then after that, you join the medical program and you can complete the medicine in another 3 years. So effectively, it's 7 years. Now, I mentioned this idea of lifelong learning and how you need to be able to continue to learn even once you've graduated. And you can see here, undergraduate studies in medicine of 6 years is only a very small part of the continuum of learning. Once you've finished at uni, you'll do your internship and your residency, and then you'll do vocational training. At that stage, you could be you're 30, which a lot of you will say, gosh, that's old. Once you get to my age, that's really young. But anyway, it's worth pointing out that throughout the internship and residency and vocational training, you are still working. It's not like you're a full-time student. You're working and studying and getting paid. Lots of possible careers in medicine. You might work clinically, so a general practitioner or a specialist. So you can see all those different specialties there. As well, though, you don't have to do clinical medicine. You can work in public health or medical research, or be a medical educator, like I am, or do health management or health policy. And it's really important that we have medical graduates in those positions. Remember too, there's lots of alternatives for medicine. You can do really important things to help patients in their medical journey or with their health without necessarily being a doctor. Some kind of other allied health professional can still have a really important contribution. Don't just believe me, these are some quotes for some final year students that was in their yearbook just before they graduated. I like that one, the whole experience was awesome. Okay, thank you for your attention, and good luck with your future career, and those of you that are doing the HSC this year, try not to stress too much.
Thank you very much, Karen. You've heard how great it is. It's time to talk about how to actually get in. Naomi's a fifth-year medical student, so it was a little while ago for her, but she's going to tell you all about the application process and what you need to keep in mind. Thanks, Naomi.
Hi, so my name's Naomi, and as was mentioned, I'm in fifth year now. So I'm in phase 3. I just finished my research project last year. And what that also means is that in 2014, basically, I was sitting right where you are right now. I think I was sitting kind of in the back of the room, around about there. And I remember feeling really nervous, and probably the only person who was more nervous than me was my mum sitting next to me. So I remember exactly what it was like. It felt like all these kind of hurdles were all converging at once, and I had no idea how I was going to kind of surmount all of them. But I got through it, and what that tells me is you can too, and you might even end up where you want to be afterwards. So today, as has been mentioned, I'll tell you all about the UNSW Medicine application process, so how you actually get in, so the technical part of the night, so make sure you listen carefully and most importantly, laugh at all of my bad jokes. First though, let me do the slide. UNSW Medicine is the most popular degree for high school leavers in New South Wales. So what that means is that the highest number of students, the largest number of students placed as their first preference last year. This is, when you think about it, an awesome thing. It reflects our great degree and the great culture that comes along with it. But what it does mean is that there are many more people applying than can be offered places. So you can see from the diagram up there, there are 278 available places. Of those, 143 are local students, 80 are international students, and 55 are rural students. In 2019, there were 2,021 applications for local spots and 200 applications for rural spots. And you can see only a few of those received interviews and a few of those received places. So what this all means, all these essentially, is that in order to be offered a place, you need to smash every stage of the interview process, of the application process and the interview process, which I'll talk about in a second. So broadly speaking, there are 3 kind of parts to it. So you need to do the UCAT, which is the newfangled version of the UMAT. You need to get a killer ATAR, and you need to sit an interview that's held at UNSW. Easy. So we'll go through all of those things one at a time and make sure they all make sense. So first of all, the UCAT, it stands for University Clinical Aptitude Test, and it's run by an independent organisation, so it's not run by UNSW. And it's running for the first time in 2019. It's been changed from UMAT to UCAT for a couple of reasons. The main one is that in the UK, it's been shown, a good score in the UCAT has been shown to correlate with factors that make good doctors. So essentially, it should make the process fairer and give higher results to those most deserving of a place. It's also great for you because it's sat on a computer, which means there are more testing centres, so you might not need to travel as far. There's also more testing times. There's not just one day that it occurs on, so you won't have to do your UCAT in the middle of trials like I did. And results can be given to you immediately after the test, so you don't have to kind of sit around nervously for months afterwards waiting to see how you've gone. In terms of the content of the UCAT, there are 5 different sections. Each are timed and each are one after the other. Importantly, there are no medical questions, so you're not expected to know anything about medicine. You can register for the UCAT right now, and you can book your testing centre. You just Google UCAT Australia. And the registrations, as you can see, close on the 17th of May, and the exam sessions will be in July sometime. So importantly also, UNSW does not recommend third-party prep courses. They tend to be really, really expensive, and they don't really guarantee you a place. As a personal anecdote, I have friends who studied for hours a week for the UMAT and didn't get a place, and I have friends who read what the UMAT was on the train on the way there and did. So you can't really guarantee a spot based on studying. You can get a bit of a better idea of what the UCAT entails by going to their website, which has some helpful official resources, and they also have some free practice questions, so you can get a bit of an idea of what kinds of questions there are. In terms of what score you need in the UCAT, there's no numerical cutoff. All applicants are essentially ranked downwards by their results, and the top ones, when combined with the ATAR, are offered an interview. As a kind of indication, we expect that people above the 50th percentile could be offered an interview. But like I said, it's the first year running, so it's all about getting those high results. Now, onto the ATAR. Importantly, there are no prerequisite subjects at UNSW Medicine, and I know this because I didn't do maths, which was awesome. So there's no one subject that you have to study in order to be offered a place. Chemistry is recommended, but whether or not you do it, it doesn't affect your application or your likelihood of receiving an offer. There's an assumed knowledge of standard English, which wouldn't be a problem for anybody sitting in the HSC. So now the tricky question of what ATAR do you need to get in? So for local students, the minimum ATAR considered is 96. That said, the lowest ATAR admitted in 2019 was 98.2, and the median was 99.7. For rural students, it's a little different. The minimum ATAR considered is 91. The lowest in 2019 was 91.97, and the median was 97.9. So that's where the 91 figure in your little handouts comes from. Onto the interview. So if you're highly ranked in both the UCAT and the ATAR, you'll be offered an interview that will be held on UNSW. In previous years, interviews have been offered on the basis of predicted ATARs, but from last year onwards, all interviews have been on the basis of actual ATARs. And I think that's a pretty good system because you can walk into your interview knowing that you've truly earned your place there, which must be a good feeling. So New South Wales interviews are going to take place in late December, and offers will go out January round 1. Interstate and IB students will be offered interviews after that point, and their offers will go out in January round 2. And that's because IB students receive their exam results later, and so the interstate students can get offers from their home state universities first. In terms of the structure and content of the interview, it's basically a timed interview with 2 people in the room. One is either a doctor or a member of the medicine faculty, and one's a member of the community. And in terms of the kinds of questions, and the best advice I can give you is really to be open and honest. The interviewers are there to find out about you and about what kind of doctor you'd be. There's no trick questions, there's no, they're not trying to make you slip up, they really just want to get to know you as a person. Like with the UCAT, interview coaching is not recommended. It tends to be really expensive again, and most interviewers can absolutely distinguish between students who've been coached and students who are just being themselves. So in terms of preparing for the interview, I would say just have a good think about who you are as a person and how you got to where you are now. At the most, maybe get a friend to ask you a couple of questions about yourself and practice answering in an honest and friendly way. So something important I have to tell you is that you have to apply to UNSW Medicine separately and in addition to putting in your UAC preferences. So when you fill in your UNSW Medicine as one of your 5 preferences on the UAC system, you'll be prompted to go to a separate site called the Medicine Application Portal, which is our personal UNSW site for applying to medicine. So here you'll put in some personal details, write a little bit about why you want to do medicine, and this submission goes directly to the Faculty of Medicine for them to look at, and it's essential for them to process your application. It's not marked at all, and it doesn't affect your admission, but it's just essential in order to be offered an interview. It's also here that you can put in your preference for which campus you want, so Sydney or Port Macquarie, and it's here as well that you can put in your preference for a bonded or an unbonded place. So I'll talk a little bit about bonded places now. So 28.5% of the domestic places available are bonded places. So this is basically a government initiative designed to address the shortage of doctors in rural and remote areas. So personally, I'd encourage you to tick the bonded box in the application portal if you're really serious about medicine. And that's because it increases your chance of being offered a spot, because unbonded places are offered to students with the highest cumulative results, regardless of whether they've ticked bonded or not. And from there on down, those last 28.5% of places, from there on down, only bonded places are available, which means if you haven't ticked bonded and you're in that next 28.5%, you simply won't be offered a place. Your place will go to the next student in line who has ticked bonded. Hope that makes sense. So here now are some key dates in the process. So basically, in short, remember to register for the UCAT if you haven't already. Put in your UAC and your medicine application portal applications when they're open, and just keep an eye on your emails. So now, another interesting question that Dr. Gibson addressed a little bit. What if you don't get in? So Not getting into our program the first time round does not mean that you don't have the potential to be an amazing doctor. So if you know it's what you want, there are a whole bunch of options out there for you. So number one, if your ATAR is above the cutoff of 96, you can just apply again the next year. So you have to sit the UCAT again the next year and see if you can get a better result in that. So you can take a year off, work for a bit, go on a gap year, go find yourself in Europe or something like that. De-stress and have another go. There's also the option, okay, repeat HSC, what a joke. You can do that if you really want. So Dr. Gibson also talked about the graduate entry program that we have, so where you begin a Bachelor of Medical Science at UNSW, and if you're in the top few of your cohort, at the end of second year, you do the UCAT, you do an interview, and then you can enter the medicine program laterally in the middle. You can also start a different uni degree. So if you do a year of another degree, any degree, UNSW will take your ATAR and your uni results and combine them to give you a new selection rank. So I reckon this is the best option if your ATAR is over 93, but not quite high enough to be competitive in the application process. So as a general rule, you'll need distinctions, a minimum all distinction averages, and at least an 85 WAM or higher, because that's the only way not to dilute your ATAR and make it lower. So if your ATAR is under 93, however, no amount of tertiary study will be able to boost your ATAR above the 96 cutoff. So the best option then is to study another degree, have an awesome time, then apply for graduate entry medicine at another university that does postgrad. Basically, in short, it doesn't hurt to have a plan B. When I submitted my preferences to UAC, my preferences were medicine, 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 archaeology, because I love old skeletons and old buildings and skeletons inside of buildings. Anyway, I would say apply to everywhere in Australia, really, to maximise your chance of getting a spot somewhere. So my final piece of advice really is to back yourself. 250 or so people have to get in, and there's no reason to believe that one of them can't be you. So that's it from me. Make sure you keep an eye on the UNSW Medicine How to Apply website, and best of luck. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you very much, Naomi. We will come back around in the question section and look at some of those really nitty-gritty questions about admissions, but the main piece of advice we can give you there is watch those key dates and look at all of those key milestones and make sure they're all up on the fridge or on your desk, wherever you're spending the most time at the moment. Now, in terms of looking forward to what the student experience can be like at UNSW and within the medicine program, we thought the best way to find out is to go right to the very top. So we've managed to secure the president of the Medical Student Society today. Thank you, Dana, who's going to tell you all about what it's actually like.
Thank you. I am going to speak about the UNSW Medicine experience, and having come from a different degree and from a different university, I can absolutely and definitively say that UNSW Medicine is truly unique. And that's not just because of the unique course structure or the clinical integration throughout the whole degree. The key that makes the experience so enjoyable and produces such fantastic doctors is the emphasis on teamwork and shared success that UNSW Medicine has. So the faculty's approach to learning and to assessment is one that's not to make good exam takers or to make databases that can recite entire textbooks. It's to make well-rounded doctors that have had a broad range of experience and have a passion for patient care, for justice, and for the ability to achieve their goals. So the approach to the assessment by the faculty is a key part of this, and it's one in which everyone can succeed, and the hallmark of success isn't one of a pure number of correct answers, but rather a diverse knowledge which can be integrated into clinical problem solving. This approach manifests as a cohort of students who lean on each other and who work together to collectively become good doctors rather than to compete against each other. So another part, aside from the academic, is obviously the social and the developmental part of medicine. So I am part of the UNSW Medical Society. You've heard about phase 1. So in phase 1, you have a really, really close-knit cohort of students. You work within 4 colleges, A, B, C, and D, and these people will be the people that you lean on throughout your entire 6 years. So here we have a photo of the class of 2024 at their med camp, which was a whole lot of fun, and that hopefully you'll be sitting next to these people next year in your tutorials and lectures. You have such a diverse range of events in first year that you can attend. There'll be some more that you see in this slideshow, but absolutely anything that you're interested in, there will be a society or an event that you can go to. In phase 2, you'll be in hospitals in your third year of medicine, which is pretty amazing. You'll be in first and second year, but third year is when you really get a good hands-on experience. You have the opportunity to go rural, where you can really integrate yourself into a community. So here you can see some students at the Albury campus, where I was last year. And of course, you have your ILP project, where you become part of a research team. And finally, in phase 3, something that a lot of students say is a highlight of their medical degree is electives. So you'll have 2 elective terms at UNSW Medicine. Most students choose to go overseas for at least one of these, and you can do such an amazing different range of things while you're on your elective. So secondly, MedSoc. So the UNSW Medical Society, in my opinion, I might be a bit biased, is one of the best medical societies in Australia. But we truly are. We have over 200 volunteer students who produce over 100 events a year and who take care of the 1,600 students within our cohort and do a fantastic job of doing so. So our kind of goal is to engage, enrich, and advocate, and we do this through a variety of different ways. So events, of course, is something that everyone enjoys, everyone gets amongst and loves. So we have everything from pub crawl and medball and grabball to International Student Networking Night. We have a lot of different events that are centered around academic skills, so suturing nights, cyst excision nights, and there's pretty much something you can do to suit any interest within that portfolio. We have some fantastic representation and support at UNSW Medicine. I think that's one of the strengths of MedSoc. So this year, for the first time, we have 2 UNSW queer representatives that take care of our LGBTIQA+ students and also advocate for better teaching within that area and hold a range of events to educate the cohort at large about these issues. We have Women in Medicine who have a fantastic mentoring program and also hold events like Women in Surgery. And in addition to this, we have an international student representative and we have Indigenous student representatives. We have 7 special interest groups in MedSoc. So you can see a few of them up there: Critical Care Society, Dermatology Society. We also have Surge Soc, which isn't up there, and Pathology Soc. So these SIGs run various events that are usually academically oriented, but also give you information about future career pathways. So you can attend Pathways Nights that will tell you how to get into the specialty of your choice. But also can tell you things, it can teach you specific skills related to that area, and can teach you skills that will relate to your assessments that are upcoming. So they run end-of-course tutorials before each exam in phase 1, and they run skills nights before exams in phase 2 and 3 as well. As well as our 7 special interest groups, we have 2 performing arts groups. So we have the Medical Musical Society, which is a student orchestra that performs concerts every year, as well as has smaller groups that go and do things like performing at Sydney Children's Hospital, at nursing homes, and hold their own events within the society. And MedShow is a fantastic initiative run all by students. They put on a show every year, and I think they have close to 100 cast members. They have dance, music, acting, tech, so there's a way that everyone can get involved with that, and it's always a very interesting and comical night. Advocacy is a big part of what we do at MedSoc. So we have students sitting on every different faculty committee, and we take the feedback from students, we take it to faculty, and then implement solutions to that, and then feed that back to students. So we advocate on mental health and well-being is something that we do very, very well here at UNSW Medicine. Our faculty is incredibly supportive. We have a student well-being action group, which is a joint committee by students and by faculty members to improve health and well-being of students. We also advocate for assessments, so we let the faculty know how students found various assessments, things that they can improve to make them more accessible, more reliable, and also issues like clinical learning, so how people are going in hospitals, and what exactly is in the curriculum, so what students feel that they're not learning enough about, and some feedback on things that are taught really well. Finally, why choose UNSW as a university over any other university? So a big part of why UNSW is so fantastic is ARC. So ARC is our student union. Every university has one. But ARC is kind of the next level of student union. So they're a huge business that runs lots and lots of different facets of student life. They have the Roundhouse, which is a gig you might have seen at the bottom of campus. They hold events from international performers. They have parties at the start and end of each session, and they also have various events every week, like trivia, table tennis competitions, so different ways that you can get involved and meet people outside of your faculty. And then finally, the White House, which is a cafe and bar on campus. They have over 300 clubs. They have a club for literally everything. Some of my favorites are the Dog Lovers Society and the Frozen Desserts Appreciation Society. And those societies run events throughout the year. There's also things like the UN Society. There's societies for every faculty. There's different video games, board games. So pretty much anything you're interested in, a range of sports, you'll find something at ARC that you can get involved in. They also support students in a range of other ways. So there's nights and events with information about finance. There's different wellbeing initiatives. And they also have a lot of different support for students in terms of finance, care packages, emergency housing, ARC legal. So any kind of issue you're having with the university or any opportunity that you want to take, ARC can help you with that. So that concludes my presentation, and hopefully I'll be seeing you next year as part of the 2025 cohort.
Thank you, Dana. And now I'd like to welcome our speakers for the evening back to the stage, and we're going to take as many questions as we possibly can. So I think the minimum UCAT score being called for, Karen, I might come to you because UCAT is new. Is there a minimum UCAT score? Has it been set?
It hasn't been set yet. Because we haven't had UCAT go through a whole year yet, we don't know what the cut-off will be.
Excellent, easy. That takes care of the first two questions. Scholarships is always a big question that we get here at the university. Dana can take the scholarships question. Can you tell us a little bit about scholarships that students should be applying for?
So each year at UNSW, there are actually thousands of dollars of scholarships that go unclaimed. So there are always scholarships you can apply for. These might not just be in raw monetary scholarships. These might also be in opportunities. So you can get placement scholarships to go overseas on electives. You can get accommodation scholarships on campus, or you can get scholarships for your research. So there are many, many different types, and you can see them on the UNSW scholarships website.
And I should say, Dana did touch on that. A lot of students go overseas as one of their elective terms. But once they get to the elective term, it's actively encouraged that our students look overseas, and there's a large range of scholarships to go with that. I'm going to knock over the meaning of the lowest ATAR. So in the book there, you've seen the lowest admitted ATAR at 91.45 is the published cutoff. So the government requires us to publish the lowest ATAR admitted to all of our programs, regardless of the entry scheme that it's associated with. So that was an equity admission, basically, and not the standard ATAR cutoff. This next one, thank you, Krish. Could you please explain how the interviews are like? Let's go to Naomi. Now I'm going to say, do you remember any of the questions you were asked in your medicine interview?
I think I remember one or two, but it was all a blur.
I can imagine.
I did a couple of interviews, so I did other unis out of state and also in state as well, and I can definitely say that UNSW was the most relaxed and probably the most friendly. Really, kind of like I mentioned before, it really is kind of a chat with two interviewers who will ask you questions about yourself, about your life. It's really nothing to worry about or, be scared of. And there's not much to prepare for except for kind of remembering who you are as a person and what you've done in your life, which is difficult if, like me, you forget what you've had for breakfast. But, yeah.
Karen, I'm imagining you've sat on a few interview panels.
I have, yes.
Excellent. What do you really want to know? What's at the heart of what you're asking students?
We really want to know what you're like as a person.
So the headline there is Be Yourself. If you're not sure how to be yourself, ask mum and dad. They'll let you know what you're really like. Okay. Can you defer medicine? This is an easy one. Yes. You can defer medicine for up to 2 years. Great. Is there room for overseas study while studying medicine? I think we've answered that one. Really, it's the elective terms that you're aiming for. Naomi, are you planning to go overseas?
Maybe I'm thinking about it. My research supervisor last year is from England, so I think she knows a couple of people who might be able to have me along. But I know I'm definitely doing one in Coffs Harbour in the emergency department, so that's fun.
Okay, and Dana, you've already been rural. Are you going to go overseas?
Yeah, certainly. So being a rural background student, I actually hadn't travelled overseas before starting medicine, but making so many new friends from so many different countries encouraged me to travel overseas for the first time this year. And I'm definitely planning on going back. I've heard that a lot of developing countries are fantastic to go to get a bit of perspective on how the health systems are in Australia, but also travelling to places like the UK and the US that have such different healthcare systems. I think it's something that even if you don't do it in your elective, is good to do at some point in your career, and it's very actively encouraged by the faculty.
And you spent a year at our clinical school in Albury last year. How did that come about? Do many students do that?
So the rural clinical schools at UNSW Medicine are very unique to others. They are fully functioning medical schools in their own right, and we do now have the end-to-end program at Port Macquarie and one opening up at Wagga, and it's a fantastic experience. It's a very small cohort, very close-knit, but you get to the point that as a third-year medical student, you know all of the doctors by first name and they know you. And they invite you sailing on the weekend, they invite you to go to their house to have paella and red wine after your PEDS term. It's a very, very lovely, close-knit community, and I would highly encourage everyone to do it. You also get fantastic clinical skills. So I was able to do skin excisions on my own when I was in third year. I have a friend who was able to help repair an abdominal aortic aneurysm while he was in third year. He was performing CPR on a patient. So kind of as much as you're interested in, that's what you can get stuck in and do when you're on a rural placement.
Naomi, you told me earlier that you get really excited about these clinical skills. How early can students expect to get involved in clinical skills?
So really from term one, you have clinical skills classes teaching you how to examine patients and how to take histories from patients. And from year one, you're in hospital seeing patients. A couple, I think it's once a fortnight, you go in for a few hours, you've got a doctor supervising you for a bedside tutorial where you go in and see patients and talk to them and examine them. In third year, you're seeing patients three out of 5 days a week, and in phase 3, where I am now, I'm in hospital 5 days a week attached to a team, and that team, will change every month or so.
Next question, I think we've answered the overseas study question. So let's talk adjustment factors for a moment. So Karen, are these factored into the admissions process for medicine?
Only the points for disadvantaged students, but certainly we don't give you bonus points for having done a particular course or achieving a particular band for a subject.
So it's work hard, it's hit the books and get the ATAR, I think is the answer to that one. Elise asks, what is the weighting of your UCAT mark when applying for the undergraduate medicine course? I'm assuming that question's around what's the weighting of UCAT versus ATAR versus interview, which is a reasonably common question. Naomi, you spoke to this a little bit earlier. Would you like to address that one?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, like we were saying before, because we don't know a cutoff for the UCAT, but I've actually been asked to emphasise that you can't compensate for one low score with another high score. So if you absolutely smash your ATAR but you get quite a low UCAT, one won't compensate for the other. So you need to they just rank people downwards in terms of the top scores in each of those kind of 2, then 3 selection criteria. So you basically need to smash every section. I'm sorry, I can't give you a more specific answer to that, as in, percentages of what they're worth, but just do your best in everything, basically.
Bonded places. So we touched on bonded places a little bit, and Naomi sort of said there were 28.5% of students are bonded. So bonded is a contract that you enter into with the government, which essentially means that you will go and do 1 year in a rural area of need post-graduation. Now that's related to the discipline, and you have a number of years post-graduation to do that. You don't have to do that in your first year out of university, but that's something to bear in mind as well. And as we said, if you want to maximise your chances of a position, Naomi made that very clear, ticking the bonded place is a good way to go about it. This is a great question. Mental health support for med students. Dana, you talked about this a little bit, the advocacy that MedSoc's doing. Can you talk a little bit about, it's stressful, right, being a med student?
Well, Yes and no. So it's stressful for being any student. There's a lot of different factors that contribute to that. So financial stress is one of them, trying to balance your studies and your life. And I think that the UNSW faculty in particular does an amazing job of compensating for this. So as I alluded to before, the grades that you get in medicine are pass-fail. So it doesn't matter if you pass with a 55 or a 95. If you pass, you pass. We are all doctors at the end of it, and we are all good doctors at the end of it. So the faculty does that and a range of other different initiatives. We have a student wellbeing officer that you can go to if you need any assistance. We have CAPS, which is counselling and psychological support on campus, that do both preventative measures in wellbeing. So they have meditation classes weekly. They have information on online different types of counselling. And they also have crisis support management. And the faculty is always implementing different ways to monitor and improve students' mental health and well-being before it deteriorates, and also to put things in place to support them when that happens. So I could talk about this all night, but if anyone has any specific questions for me afterwards, I'd be happy to answer them.
Main differences, if any, between the Sydney and Port Macquarie campuses, they're in different postcodes. No, in terms of the learning experience, Karen, it's the same program being delivered.
It is the same program. All our lectures are live streamed to Port Macquarie, so the students at Port Macquarie see them at the same time as the Sydney students. In fact, this means some of our Sydney students don't come to the lecture theatre anymore. They view them from elsewhere around Sydney because we're live streaming to Port Macquarie. All the other activities are the same, and occasionally the Port Macquarie students come down to Sydney for particular activities if needed.
This last question now, I think, what sort of attributes does UNSW look for in students? I hope that you've had a little bit of a feel for that through the night, but I'm going to go to each panel member and I'm going to ask you one attribute that, not what we necessarily look for in students, but one attribute you believe is important to being a UNSW medical student and sets you up for that future success as a doctor, not just an exam taker, as Naomi put it to me elegantly earlier this evening. One attribute, if you had to name one.
So passion, whether that be for learning, for social justice, or for doing your best in an assessment.
Naomi.
Teamwork. So working with other medical students and other doctors to get the best outcome for your patients.
And Karen?
I guess caring for the outcome.
So passion, teamwork and care. And on that note, I'd like to thank our expert panel for all of their contribution this evening. In terms of next steps, don't forget to register for UCAT, check in on all of the key dates, and visit us again on Open Day if you've got any further questions on the 7th of September. Thank you for joining us at UNSW. Have a safe evening and a safe trip home. Thank you.